cultural resilience, researchers focused on indigenous populations to understand what it was that they continued to persevere. And it wasn't about understanding why they did not assimilate to the colonizers' way of life, but rather just how they persevered, and not from resilience research that talks about trauma, but rather focused on the assets and how they survived. And the indigenous communities, what they learned was, well, they had this thing called cultural resilience, meaning they had these experiences and they used their culture, their environment, their context to be able to move through their situation. What we've done is said, well, what if we took that concept and said, we all build skills based on our life experiences. And instead of focusing on, did it happen in a bad way or a good way? Did it happen traumatically or not? What if we could identify those strengths? And then better yet, what if we could translate it so that academically people could recognize them, so that employers could recognize them? Because they won't recognize always the story. Depends on who's listening to the story. And I wanted to make sure that, well, I'm only one person. I'm not going to convince everyone to appreciate people's stories. But what I can do is translate for them into skills that they can understand. I appreciate the online questions here about what defines excellently prepared. I think the question to answer that is, depends on who's asking. Depends on who's answering. Gets to define what is excellently prepared. What we do know, though, and I'll offer this, is what's best for all of us. What's best for everyone, not just those children. So I want to highlight this piece around SEL. Because for me, what I started to realize again is this focuses on what is intrinsic in every human being. It blows me away that this is not something that's in every curricular, in every school, in every institution. How can you not work with children and not focus on what's inside of them? At the same time, if you remember the two arrows about academic excellence and equity, I realized, well, what if, even if you are able to do this, even if I'm able to be successful as an individual, to keep my hopes up, to keep moving forward, we cannot ignore the systems that are ensuring that I fail. And so how do we marry those two pieces? So a lot of times we get into these places where we think it's a one-size-fits-all. We show graduation pictures, and then somebody comes up here and talks and says, look at what my program can do. This is not about programs. It's really understanding some core concepts. I have a spoken word activity that I use with students and occasionally adults, if you all are willing. We talk about who you are, what it is that you care about. More importantly, not stopping there. Too often, again, we get stuck on the story. And I don't want to ignore the story.